All right. Hey, good morning. It's great to be with you this morning. If you got a Bible, grab it. We'll be in Acts chapter 18 this morning. Acts chapter 18. So obviously things were a little bit different this morning. Glad to see everybody made it, and we're just hoping logistically it all is going to work out. Just a reminder, just so we're all on the same page, we did not intend for this plan to make your life miserable, though I know, it's all about preparing in this building so that when we move across the street, we'll be ready to rock and roll, and it's going to be awesome. So remember this, because this is what I'm reminding myself. This is a season of preparation, not perfection. See the grace there? It's good. We like grace at this church. Preparation, not perfection. When you get over there and you hold me to perfection, we'll work on that when we get there. But right now, we're preparing for what God has for us in the future and really looking forward to what that's going to look like and be like. So, Acts chapter 18, the book of Acts, such an interesting book, right? It's this story, God writing this story through ordinary people just like you and me, who God uses to lead all people everywhere, all generations to know and follow Jesus. That's the story that we're a part of. That's the story that God's writing through the book of Acts. But what we've seen so far in this story, I hope you've seen this. If not, maybe I haven't done my job very well. But I hope you're seeing that it is anything but easy. Right? The mission that God has given to the church in Acts, the same mission that he's given to us today, is anything but easy. In fact, it's very difficult. It's a really hard mission that he's given to us. And so the question that I want to put before you this morning is, what do we do when it gets hard? How do we keep going on? Like what propels us, what motivates us to keep after it, to keep at it, to keep going, to keep moving? And what I want you to see this morning is that God is going to meet us in that place, and he's going to give us everything that we need. As you're going to see here in the story in chapter 18, Paul is going to walk into a new city. He's going into a new place, and we don't know all of the things because Luke doesn't give us all of the details of that, but what we do know is that there's a struggle. And though we don't know the details, here's what we do know. God shows up and he meets Paul right in the midst of the struggle, right in the midst of the fight, right in the midst of the hardship, and gives him everything he needs. In fact, he's going to give him friends, he's going to give him encouragement, and he's going to give him uncommon strength to continue on, to keep moving. And I hope that encourages you this morning as we talk about 3 lessons from Acts chapter 18 that I think will help us keep after it, keep on, and keep moving. The first lesson is that friendship matters. In this mission that the Lord has given to us, friendship matters more now than maybe ever because it's hard. You're going to see verse 1. After this, Paul, he left Athens and he went to Corinth. So he's leaving a city and he's moving on to another city. And there in Corinth, he found a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had commanded all of the Jews to leave Rome. So he's kicking out all the Jews in Rome. So all the Jews that were in Rome are now scattered all over the region. Here we are in Corinth. And so Paul, he went to see them. And because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them and he worked, for they were tent makers by trade. And he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath, and he tried to persuade Jews and Greeks. So Paul leaves Athens, and now he comes to the city of Corinth. And when we read this story, and when we take a look at Paul and his ministry, I don't know about you, but I certainly feel this way. Paul seems like he can be a little bit of a loner. He's almost like that guy, that soldier that you drop off behind enemy lines, like deep behind enemy lines, and his job is to gain reconnaissance against the enemy and figure out how the enemy's moving and working and then report back. It's almost as though Paul's that guy. But really, Luke helps us see that Paul is actually not at all that guy. Paul deeply valued friendships. He deeply valued community. You have to keep in mind that at this point, Timothy and Silas are still in Macedonia. When Paul left to go to Athens, remember he was kicked out of Berea from the Thessalonians who showed back up into Berea. They kicked him out, and so Paul has to sneak out alone at night, and he comes to Athens, and he does all of the stuff that he did in Athens all by himself, and now he's at this new city called Corinth, and guess what? He's all alone. Timothy and Silas remained in Macedonia, and Paul now moves to Corinth without them. And so here it is, Paul in a new city with new unknowns and uncertainties. You ever moved into a transition in your life with unknowns and uncertainties? Maybe you felt alone, right? So here's Paul, right? Moving into a new city, new uncertainties, unknowns, all of the things, doesn't know the future, doesn't know what's going to happen to him in Corinth, but if the past is any indicator of the future, it's going to be tough, right? So Paul's in Corinth all alone, but I love this because God doesn't leave him alone. So though he feels alone, he walks into Corinth and he's not alone. God doesn't leave him alone. In fact, in Corinth, Paul meets Aquila and Priscilla. They become lifelong friends and partners in ministry. Paul lives with them. He works alongside of them. He even travels with them. In fact, this couple is actually going to board a boat with Paul at the end of this story, and they're going to travel together. In fact, they become not only friends and partners in ministry, they leave their livelihood to join Paul in the mission. They become missionaries themselves, right? These are the kind of people that God leaves in Corinth for Paul to meet, to befriend, and become partners in ministry. Then at just the right moment, guess who shows up? Silas and Timothy. And they arrive at just the right moment to encourage Paul, but not only encourage Paul, but also to bring him support. You might remember from 2 Corinthians chapter 8, the church in Macedonia was a very poor church. They didn't have a whole lot, but they were a very generous church. In fact, so generous were they that they gave over and beyond, literally Paul says they gave over and beyond what they could, all to support Paul and his ministry. And so Paul gets some new wind in his sails, so to speak. And the beautiful principle here is that God often provides the strength that we need through the people he puts in our place and around us. Right, that's what's so cool here, right? Paul walks into this new city, in this new place with all these unknowns, and yet God has people for him there. He's already preparing it for him. God's already there. God's already working. And so he meets Priscilla and Aquila. They become lifelong friends. Timothy and Silas show up at just the right time. They bring along with them the presence of the church in Macedonia along with their financial support. And the principle, again, is just to remember God often provides the strength we need through the people he puts around us. Now, don't miss the significance of that. Don't miss the significance of that because I know firsthand what it's like to take the people around you for granted. Growing up, I did not have a single Christian friend. There was not a friend in my life that I could call a faithful Christian. And so there were times in my life where I felt really alone. I'd go to church and I didn't connect super well with the kids in our youth ministry, which was tough, right? We just didn't have a whole lot in common. And so what I would do is I'd end up inviting people to church. And so the people who I did have in common with were the people that I brought, and I'm pretty sure they were only there for 3 things, which 1, I invited them, 2, we had donuts, and then 3, there were a whole lot of pretty girls. And so they came. But at the end of the day, they weren't really serious about following Jesus. And so, man, at school, it was not uncommon for me to feel kind of alone trying to figure out how to do this all by myself. So students, just encouragement to you, don't overlook friendships at church just because they aren't exactly like you. Because though they're not exactly like you, they will be your support when you need it the most. Don't forsake that. It's really hard to be faithful by yourself. Parents, don't forsake the church. Like don't think that ball is more important. Like we're dealing with that right now with our kid, Lane. He's a good little athlete, and he's getting recruited by all these traveling teams. And listen, all that stuff is good and great in its rightful place, but I'm telling you, what are they going to do when that's over? The church remains. It's forever. It's the only thing eternal on this earth. So what do you do when your life falls apart? What do you do when you don't get a W on the scoreboard? Don't punt your kid's support system because you think that there are more things, there's things that are more important. Challenge them, push them, say, hey, build friendships, encourage that. Again, challenge them. Just because they're not like you doesn't mean that they aren't a good friend for you, right? I'm pretty sure that maybe Timothy and Silas didn't have everything in common with Paul. In fact, you get that in their personalities, yet here they are. And in Paul's time of need, guess who shows up? His support system. So good. But here's the deal, right? Like, this is not just true for students, it's true for all of us, right? The Christian life was designed to be carried out in community. It was designed that way. You need it, I need it, we need it. Like, we need one another to figure out how in the world are we going to be faithful as we live this stuff out. And so who has God placed in your life right now to be a source of encouragement and support? And then who has God placed in your life right now where you can be a source of encouragement and support to them? Like, who are you holding accountable, and who's holding you accountable? Who's pushing you on? Who's encouraging you, and who are you pushing on, and who are you encouraging? The Christian life was never meant to be lived on your own. And don't miss this about Paul, because this is helpful. While his mission was to people outside of the church, his support system came from those within it. You should have lost people in your life. You should have friends that are lost people. You should be mixing it up in life with people who don't believe like you, act like you, think like you. You should. We are the salt and the light of the earth. How can you be salt and light if you can't be salt and light because everybody believes and acts and thinks and looks like you? Like, we're supposed to mix it up with those who don't. But we don't forsake our support system. Right, I was talking to a great friend this week, and we were talking about this very thing, and he's like, man, I'm trying to figure out how can I be around more lost people, and yet at the same time, my support system is those within the church. That's what Paul models for us. And so if you don't know where to start, follow Paul. Like, Paul walks into a new city, and what is his mission? His mind is, I've got to go reach people. So Paul puts himself in places where he can go reach people. But then who does he run to in times of need, community, and support? Well, he runs to Priscilla and Aquila. He finds people who love Jesus, who are following Jesus on mission, right? And with whom you share some sort of common ground with, and then you invest in them. And those become your support system in this effort, in this mission to go and reach people who do not know Jesus, who are far from God, right? So that's our first lesson. Friendships matter. Here's the second lesson. The second lesson is faithfulness is the goal. Faithfulness is the goal. I think oftentimes our culture is just obsessed with results, right? We're obsessed with results, but here Paul helps us see that it's not results that we're after, it's faithfulness that we're after. Faithfulness is the goal. You'll see in verse 5. Notice what Paul's doing when Timothy and Silas arrive. Luke says that Paul was occupied with the word, testifying to the Jews that the Christ was, in fact, Jesus. So no matter what Paul faces, Paul stays faithful to the mission to lead all people everywhere to know and follow Jesus, even when opposed, rejected, or misunderstood. That's the story of Paul's life. It continues to be the story of his life. Look at verse 6. It's kind of wild. Verse 6 says that when they opposed and reviled Paul, he shook out his garments and he said to them, "Your blood be on your own heads, for I am innocent." In other words, hey, I'm doing my job. I'm doing my job. So that's between you and God. Therefore, Paul says, from now on, I will go to the Gentiles. And he left there and he went to the house of a man named Titius Justus, a worshiper of God. His house was next door to the synagogue. Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, believed the Lord together with his entire household. And many of the Corinthians, hearing Paul, believed and were baptized. Paul's life demonstrates exactly what it looks like to live a life of faithfulness. He keeps showing up even when opposed and reviled, which, by the way, to be reviled is to be strongly criticized, hated, or verbally abused. That's what it means to be reviled. So here, Paul is opposed, rejected, reviled, highly criticized, hated, and verbally abused. And yet, what does he do? He keeps at it. He doesn't stop. He keeps sharing the gospel. He moves next door. And then we get an important detail at the end of this section. In verse 11, you know what verse 11 says? Luke tells us that despite all of that, Paul does what? He stays there for a year and 6 months teaching the word among them. This is remarkable. And it's remarkable because in the book of Acts, if you've been following along with Paul, Paul doesn't stay in one place for very long. In fact, he goes there, he preaches the gospel, he usually gets beaten, thrown in jail, does something like that, and then Paul leaves and he moves on to the next one. And yet here, Paul stays for a year and 6 months and he just ministers to the people. He keeps showing up. He stays, he teaches, he preaches, he disciples, he endures opposition, he just keeps showing up. And sometimes I think that when things get hard, when we're reviled, when we experience opposition, the easiest thing for us to do is to dial back, to go somewhere else. But Paul shows you and me that we can do hard things. We can do hard things. And sometimes faithfulness means staying long enough to do the work that God has called you to do, even when it's hard or uncomfortable or doesn't make sense. And guys, this is true of all of life, right? It's not just true of when we're following Jesus. It's true of every aspect of our life. It's true of ministry. It's true in marriage. It's true in parenting. It's true in our belonging to a church. It's true in serving. It's true in our careers. It's true in our relationships. In our instant everything world, we want quick results. But the story of Acts reminds us that the kingdom of God often grows through what Eugene Peterson calls a long obedience in the same direction. Which, if you're like me and you struggle with this thing called patience, it's not a fruit of the Spirit. It is a fruit of the Spirit, just so we're on the same page. If you struggle with patience and you hear this and you think, man, it's just a long obedience in the same direction, just the same thing over and over again, it's like, yes. It's being faithful to show up. It's being faithful to teach, to disciple, to endure opposition, to keep showing up. That's when God does his best work. And here's the reason why all this matters. Despite being resisted and reviled, guess what happens? Paul's faithfulness bears fruit. Paul's faithfulness bears fruit. In fact, Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, comes to faith, which would have been a shocker to everybody in the community. Of all the people who shouldn't come to faith, it would be this guy, and yet he comes to faith. And then right after that, we learn that Titius Justus believes, and then so do many of the other Corinthians. So because of Paul's faithfulness, he's now experiencing fruitfulness, and the reason being is because fruitfulness is born through our faithfulness. When we are faithful to the right things, God is faithful to bring fruit from those efforts. Now, the opposite is also true. I've heard a lot of people talk about faithfulness. Well, it's just faithfulness, just faithfulness, just faithfulness. Listen, if your faithfulness is not producing some sort of fruit, it's probably not faithfulness. So, unlike Paul, you need to stop and go, well, hey, maybe my faithfulness is not actually faithfulness. Maybe I need to reconsider what faithfulness looks like. Because there are some who would say, I'm just being faithful and I go to church and I do this and I do that. But maybe, just maybe, God's calling you to do something different. And you need to know that faithfulness is to take a step of faith and do something different. If your faithfulness is not producing some sort of fruit, then you should probably reconsider, well, am I really being faithful? Fruitfulness is born through faithfulness. Here's the third lesson. The third lesson is that God's presence is the basis of our courage. When life gets hard, when following Jesus is anything but easy, God's presence becomes the basis of our courage. I don't know about you, but I get this picture from Paul. that he's just this fearless guy who's unaffected by anything. I mean, how many people do you know gets taken outside of a city, stoned to a point where people look at him and they're like, he's dead, and the next thing you know, he's like running back into the city asking for more. And so I'm like, he's nuts. And he seems so unaffected. I mean, even in this story, right? He's opposed. He's reviled. People are verbally abusing this guy, and he stays there for a year and 6 months. Like, what's wrong with this dude? And I just think, I can't even relate to that because he seems so unaffected by everything he experiences. But here's what's wild. The truth of the matter is that Paul tells us that when he walked into Corinth, he was anything but fearless. In fact, he tells us the complete opposite. Though we get this picture from Luke, Luke does a great job making him look really, really awesome and this fearful, perfect dude. And yet, Paul tells us something totally different. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 3, he says that when he walked into Corinth, here's what he says. He says, I came in weakness, in fear, and in much trembling. He even goes on to say that he even stumbled over his words, that his presentation of the gospel to the people was far less than perfect. Oh, wait, the great apostle Paul experienced fear? This great apostle Paul wasn't perfect? Okay, well, now I can relate. Like now I can see exactly what Paul's saying, and now I feel like I can apply it to my life. Now, Paul, being all that he is, walks into this city, experiences fear, and yet pushes through the fear. And the reason why he does that is because of what you see in verse 9. Look at how God meets Paul in spite of his fear. Verse 9 says, and the Lord said to Paul one night in a vision, Paul, do not be afraid, but go on speaking and do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will attack you to harm you. For I have many in this city who are my people. In this vision that God gives Paul in the middle of his sleep, helps us learn an important distinction. Fearlessness isn't the absence of fear. Fearless is not the absence of fear. It is faithfulness despite the fear. So fearlessness isn't the absence of fear. It is faithfulness in spite of the fear. It's being faithful even though I'm fearful, even though it doesn't make sense, even though it's uncertain, even though I don't know what's to come. True fearlessness is to go, man, I don't have all the answers, but man, I'm going to step in here and I'm going to be faithful in spite of my fears. And then notice that God doesn't shame Paul for that fear. Right? He doesn't go, good grief, Paul, here we are again. Like, are we serious? No, he doesn't do that. He meets him right in his fear and he gives him exactly what he needs to continue. Look at the basis of encouragement. He commands Paul, hey, Paul, do not be afraid. Hey, Paul, what do you have to be afraid of? What can man do to you? Paul, keep on going. He reinforces the mission. He says, Paul, keep on speaking. Hey, don't stop now, Paul. Hey, don't give up on me now. Keep speaking. He gives him a promise. He says, I am with you. Paul, you may feel lonely. Hey, Paul, you may not have it all figured out. Hey, you may not have all the answers, but I'm here with you. I'm in the fight. I'm right here with you. I'm right behind you. I'm cheering you on. I'm loud in your voice, in your ears, Paul. Keep going. He provides him protection. He says, Paul, no one's going to lay a hand on you. Paul, in this city, I know your past. I know what you've been through. But in this city, no one's going to lay a hand on you. And then he encourages him with his purpose. Paul, I've got many people in this city who are mine. I'm working in hearts left and right in this city of Corinth, this great grand city. I'm working, I'm moving, I'm doing some things. So Paul, don't give up on me now. I need you right here. I need you to proclaim the gospel because faith comes by hearing and believing, right? So they've got to hear the gospel, Paul, and I'm working in their hearts. So Paul, you just keep showing up and you keep preaching and you keep delivering and you keep being faithful and I'll be faithful to produce the fruit. And so what we see is that Paul's courage isn't rooted in skill, personality, or performance. It's not in how good he is. It's not in, his lofty speech, as Paul calls it. It's not in words of wisdom or eloquence that that his courage is found. Paul stayed in Corinth despite his fear because his courage was rooted in God's presence and promise. I'm going to be with you. I got your back. I'm your champion. Paul, keep going. I'm working. I'm moving. I'm doing. Just keep showing up, Paul. Don't look behind. Look forward. Be present, Paul. I got your back. And here's how God shows up and delivers on that promise. Check out verse 13. Paul continues his ministry. More opposition arises. Paul is opposed. He's taken. He's brought off to Gallio, the governor of the region. And verse 13 gives us the accusation. They bring him before the governor and they say, hey, this man is persuading people to worship God contrary to our law. And notice this. But when Paul was about to open his mouth, so before Paul could even get a word out, Gallio says to the Jews, if it were a matter of wrongdoing or vicious crime, O Jews, I would have reason to accept your complaint. But since it is a matter of questions about words and names and your own law, see to it yourselves. Paul didn't even have to speak up. Paul didn't even have to defend himself before God showed himself to be faithful to his promise. And so as a result of that, verses 18 through 22, Paul, Aquila, and Priscilla continue doing some ministry, and then they're going to hop back on a boat. And then they're going to go to a new city, and they're going to continue their mission. They're going to go to the city of Ephesus, and Paul's going to part ways with Priscilla and Aquila. They're going to do ministry there, and Paul's going to continue on. He's going to go back to Antioch, and there he's going to wrap up his second missionary journey to then prepare to begin his third missionary journey. So I want you to remember, fearlessness doesn't come from knowing that bad will happen, that nothing bad will happen. It comes from knowing that God will be with us whatever happens. Or like our courage is not based on anything that we do or we don't do. It's not based on how gifted I am, how skilled I am, personality, whatever, you fill in the blank with whatever that is. Our fearlessness, our courage doesn't come from knowing that nothing bad's going to happen. In fact, we know that bad's going to happen. We know that hardship is going to come. It comes from knowing that God's going to be with us no matter what happens. No matter what you face today or tomorrow, you know that God is faithful to be with you in it. So there's zero promise. There's zero promise that if you do all of the right things, like you could be doing all of the right things, all of them. You could get up early and have a quiet time. You could give generously to the church. You could be here every time the doors are open. You could do all the right things with your kids and still have hardship in your life. In fact, I guarantee you will. So there's no guarantee for you that if you choose to follow Jesus, that all of a sudden, man, it's just going to be easy and it's just going to be this smooth ride and everything's going to fall into place. And it's just not true. But the promise that God gives you and he gives me is that no matter what you face, he's going to be there with you. That the God who created the heavens and the earth and everything in between, he's going to be there with you. He's going to provide for you. He's going to show up for you. He's going to be your champion. When you're lonely, you don't have to be alone because he's with you. When you're fearful, you don't have to be fearful because he's with you. That's the promise that you have as a Christian. That even when things get hard, and they will, you aren't alone. So in this mission to lead all people everywhere to know and follow Jesus, God gives us everything that we need. Everything, including himself, right? Friends, well, he provides them. Support system, he provides them. Strength to stay, strength to be faithful, he provides it. Courage when we're afraid, he provides it. Fruit, results, God's at work. And so you and I mean, we don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to rely on us. We don't have to do it all alone. We don't even have to be unafraid. We just simply need to trust God. Trust the God who is with you, and that he is faithful to take the next step. Whatever that step is, he's faithful to take it with you. That's our role. Show up, be faithful, trust God. That sounds a whole lot easier than it really is, doesn't it? This week, I was thinking, Lord, this is so easy. Yet it is so incredibly difficult. It's like golf. I was playing golf on Friday and I was like, this game is so easy. Like you just have to get to the green in two putt and you par. That's all you have to do. And yet it's so incredibly hard. And it's not hard because the game's hard. It's hard because of what exists between the two ears. So much of it is right here. Following Jesus is not hard. We just make it hard because we don't trust him. So, when it gets hard, here's my challenge. Show up, be faithful, and trust him with the results. And I promise you, it'll go a whole lot better for you than if you try to trust you. Try to trust your ingenuity or your creativity or your personality or your gifting. Show up, be faithful, trust him. And then watch what God does with your faithfulness. Let's pray. God, thank you that you give us everything that we need. Not too much, not too little. Father, you show up and you give us everything that we need right when we need it in the time that we need it. God, I'm so thankful for that grace and that mercy, Lord. I'm thankful that you see us, you know us, and you love us, and you're not indifferent to us. And even when life gets hard and things get hard and following you becomes difficult, and Father, here you are, you show up, you provide for us. And again, you give us everything that we need to keep going and keep running the race. And so, Lord, I ask that you do that today. I ask that, Lord, if there's folks in the room who just need to confess and say, Lord, I'm just not trusting you. Pray that they do that, Lord. I pray that for those in the room who, man, their life is just tough and they can't see a way through it, Lord, I pray that you show yourself faithful to them. I pray that you would open their eyes, open their heart to see you clearly. That maybe they're walking into an uncertain season, a Corinth kind of season, and Lord, they don't know what's on the other side. I pray that, God, you would help them to know that you're going to be in that season. Lord, for those who just walked in just tired and exhausted from life, I pray that you would meet them and just give them energy. I pray for those who feel alone this morning, God, I pray that you would just provide them a friend. This morning, I pray that you would provide them a friend, a support system, someone to invest in them and they can invest in them. I pray for those, Lord, who walked in here this morning and life is going well. Lord, thank you for that. Thank you for that gift. I pray that you just continue to fan that flame. God, I pray for those who, Lord, do not know you, that have walked in here and somebody invited them and they're coming here and they're just trying to find hope, or they're looking for something, they're searching for true joy, true happiness, true meaning, whatever that is. Lord, I pray that some way, somehow, they would find that in this place. God, I pray for all of us this morning that we would be reminded that Jesus paid it all. Not just a little bit, but all of it. That all of our sin, past, present, and future, has been paid for. That we no longer are seen according to our sin and shame and our guilt, but Lord, you see us according to your perfect righteousness. That we now stand in the righteousness of Christ. And though we are far from perfect, We are forgiven. We are redeemed. We are given a new life and a new purpose and meaning. That all of this in this life, it's no longer meaningless, but we have a purpose. God, thank you that in the gospel we find true joy. Joy that can outlast any trial, any circumstance, any uncertainty. God, help us to believe that again this morning. Help us to see it and experience it anew. And then, God, help us to be faithful. Whatever it is, whatever faithfulness looks like for us, whatever steps you're laying on our heart right now, Lord, help us to be faithful to those steps. Help us to trust you in the midst of them. And Lord, I ask that you would produce rich fruit from our lives. It's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.